What's up, everybody? Welcome into a new The Blitz Network Radio. With you, as always, is TBN Editor-in-Chief and your host, Robert Zaglinski. Joining me is my good friend, Adam Hess, who is our lead multimedia producer. And Adam, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about the frickin' NFC North champion Chicago Bears and how bad the Blackhawks are. Maybe
we're not talking about that. We don't want to depress any listeners. Yes, the 2018 NFC North champion Bears clinched a division title, their first since 2010, with a 24-17 win over the Packers. A fitting victory over the Packers, and we're going to get into all the particulars on this TBN Postgame Edition podcast. You guys can follow Adam on Twitter @_Adam Hess. You can follow me on Twitter @Robert Zaglinski. And you can follow us collectively, our little hive mind on Twitter @TheBlitzNet. And Adam, right away, just your overall impressions from today's game, which on its face, the score might make it seem as if the Bears, this was a back and forth battle, but I thought they generally controlled play for 60 minutes.
Yeah, I think, I had two main takeaways. Number one, I talked about in my game preview, or in my game pick, I should say, and then even last week when we did our podcast in the week leading up, I said, the Bears have stepped up to these big moments. They have, they've come out and they've played extremely well and, almost dominated when it's counted most. And I think I agree, outside of the one drive that Aaron Rodgers led after the Bears, failed fake punt in which the Packers started with the ball, like I think the 47-yard line or something like that. Outside of that, the defense played extremely well. The offense was sharp. And then, so outside of the team playing well overall, my other big takeaway, kind of speaking of the offense being sharp, was Mitch Trubisky just stepping up in such a huge way. Today was the kind of game that you want from a franchise quarterback in a big moment like this. The numbers don't bear out an elite performance, like 230 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, only 16 running yards, but he was in control of this game. He made some big time throws when it counted. The touchdown pass to Trey Burton is one of his absolute biggest throws of his career at this point. It wasn't like some extremely flashy throw. It, even watching it back, was a little bit of a duck with the spiral, but just that moment, that statement throw coming back after, the tough situation that they were in, tie football game, for him to put that statement and basically win the game for his team across the field from Aaron Rodgers. What a huge performance from him. So I was just very encouraged by his performance in this game as well.
Yeah, I thought with Trubisky in particular, the Packers essentially used the same game plan as they did in week 1, Adam, where they blitzed random DBs at occasional times. They try to get at him with extra blitzers and extra pressure to throw him off kilter. And unlike in week 1, he didn't put his head down. He didn't just, he didn't all of a sudden start seeing ghosts and take himself into sacks. On Sunday, there were at least 2 or 3 plays that, by my count, by my unofficial count, where he definitely avoided pressure and then found a Bears receiver downfield or scrambled down. I think the most notable one to me, a Packers defender came right off the line of scrimmage. Don't remember the exact name, but he came right off the line of scrimmage, and Trubisky's avoided him, juked him out, and then found Shaheen streaking down the sideline for a 23-yard gain. Adam Shaheen, that is. I remember a lot of people, even maybe us to an extent, panicking after that initial performance in Green Bay, where he only had 171 yards passing. Well, today was like really, really the best example of how far he's come in 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think you kind of nailed it on the head there. Just the growth is tangible when you watch this game compared to what they did, to how week 1 played out, especially because they were pretty similar situations when you think about the Bears having, a double-digit lead at halftime, blowing that pretty much right away. In the second quarter, or the third quarter, I should say, kind of, back against the wall. And yeah, like you said, the defensive scheme that the Packers brought was very similar, but Trubisky was better today than the Packers defense, and that's what's so important. He took care of the football, which is primarily the number one thing. As long as Mitch Trubisky takes care of the football and doesn't turn the football over, he's like the Bears are going to consistently be in a position to win football games because of how good their defense is. So that alone was a big step, obviously, coming off of that 3 interception performance last week. So that's a big moment for Trubisky. But then on top of that, with that in mind, moving on from that, the fact that he made so many big throws and played so well in big moments and avoided sacks, bobbing and weaving, making plays like the one you just mentioned, just very, very good performance from him all around. Definitely very, very encouraging as this team moves on toward what is now a guaranteed playoff spot.
I think outside of Trubisky too, it was a fitting day of franchise players, Adam, or guys that should or hopefully are franchise players, or hopefully will be franchise players coming through again and again. The other man, the other defensive face, the other guy that has taken control of the Bears as Trubisky has developed, none other than Khalil Mack, the man that entirely changed the complexion of where the Bears were heading the moment they traded for him on September 1st. He was at his absolute best against the team that could have had him in the Packers. 2.5 sacks. The Bears had 5 as a team, and I think I would give him credit for helping facilitate much of the other 2, aside from some great moves by Leonard Floyd. That one, obviously, incredible sack where he was turned around but already had all the forward momentum, already had beaten backup Packers tackle Jason Spriggs so badly that he just took his momentum into Rodgers for a sack. I mean, this was the kind of Super Bowl generational talent, really taking it up a notch when it mattered most.
Yeah, absolutely. Along with that too, like just the fact that Khalil Mack sacked Aaron Rodgers with his ass is so hilarious.
Yeah, I wasn't going to necessarily say it that way, but yeah.
Right. And it's and I mean, if you're gonna, let's just call it what it is. Basically, that to me, that's kind of what this was. And then on top of that, with that being the situation, I just love that is almost like a picture of both teams' seasons. Just Khalil Mack kind of willing the Bears, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's just him, obviously, because he's not doing everything, but what a difference he's made to this team. And then, Aaron Rodgers, despite not turning the ball over, has not had, the kind of season that you would expect from a quarterback of his caliber. Not to say that he is, I wouldn't even necessarily say he's lost a step, but he's just not having a fantastic season. Part of that was obviously their coaching situation. But with that being said, Aaron Rodgers kind of, flailing in that moment, whereas Khalil Mack steps up big and just makes a play. Just such an incredible picture of what this season has looked like for both teams.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about my son, Adam. Leonard Floyd had 2 sacks today. Could have arguably had a third that would have been far more punctuating in terms of just a 4th down moment and getting the whole stadium to erupt like a volcano. I think that's what I said on Twitter. But, Leonard Floyd's performance as that second outside linebacker in recent weeks, Leonard Floyd's performance as that, originally he was going to be the face of that defense, and now he's kind of taken an ancillary role. I mean, that's going to happen when Mack is on the same roster. He's really thrived in that. And if this is the kind of player we're going to get, if this is the kind of player that also picks it up, if he's, getting 6 to 7 and 8 sacks and being a consistent force in the backfield as he was against the Packers. I mean, the Packers offensive line, they're extremely banged up. And we've seen, and in the past, that has really, really harmed, that has really harmed the Bears. That hasn't really made much of a difference to the Bears. The Bears haven't been able to muster up enough pressure. Today, thanks to Floyd, obviously thanks to Mack, as we mentioned, they got after them. And that was, this just to me, I don't want to take too much from a victory because this was a fitting victory for the Bears over the Packers, but it was just so cool to see so many incremental foundational pieces be the reason for the franchise's first playoff berth in 8 years. I mean, that's the best way I'm trying to put this. Floyd in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kind of drive the point home, but the old cliche is your best players need to be your best players. And today, Khalil Mack, Leonard Floyd, Mitch Trubisky, Akeem Hicks had a great game. Allen
Tariq
Robinson,
Cohen.
yeah, Tariq Cohen, Allen Robinson did. Allen Robinson didn't stuff the stat sheet, but he made some big plays. Josh Bellamy is not even one of the Bears' best players, but he made one of the best offensive plays of the day with an amazing catch. And so, just when you have moments like that where your best players are being your best players, and then on top of that, you have some of your depth guys making some of your best plays, that's just, that's basically what you want in a football team. And that's a sign of a team that is really prepared to not just win their division, obviously, but to make a run in the playoffs. And I really think the Bears can do that.
We do, Adam, before we get back to some of those individual performances, the other story of the day, because like I was saying earlier, the Bears controlled play for 60 minutes, and it was really perplexing and still really a little bit discomforting to have Matt Nagy make some, I guess at this point, trademark head-scratching decisions. And I preface this by saying he has done a Coach of the Year level job. He is going to win Coach of the Year. He's incredible. You don't become the first rookie Bears head coach since George Halas himself to win 10 games in a season without being a good coach. But just, Sunday was another example of him just overthinking things. A 3rd and 3 short run for Taquan Mizell, a fake punt where why not just line up the offense? I mean, there's no problem with being aggressive and going for it and trying to step on your opponent's throat. But like I just said, and like you hammered away on, put the ball in your best player's hands. Don't put it in a special teamer like Benny Cunningham. Don't put it on a non-regular play like a punt or it was just a direct snap. Like, why not just let Mitch Trubisky throw it, or let Mitch Trubisky try to quarterback sneak it, or give it to Jordan Howard, that kind of thing. And then later, a wildcat call where you split Mitch Trubisky out and you're trying to run a mesh point with Howard and Cohen, and that ends up in a fumble. Just these decisions that I like the aggressive tone by them, but they just don't seem to always be as calculated. And this has been something that he's done through all year. It's kind of a minor concern overall for me, but we do have to discuss it.
Yeah, I think, Matt Nagy even said as much after the game, and I do kind of agree with this, that those are the kind of moves where if they work, we're singing Matt Nagy's brilliance. I think we even think about the quote unquote Santa sleigh, where last week they had the pass to Bradley Soul. If that play results in an interception and it goes for a pick six, we're all going, what the hell? Why did they draw up a play for Bradley Soul? But it works. And so we kind of sing Matt Nagy's praises. How fun, what a great idea, stuff like that. So it's one of those things. The fake punt I take a lot more issue with than the play with Tariq Cohen, because that was clearly a miscommunication on Cohen's part, trying to make a quarterback read that he didn't make correctly, and then trying to shove the ball into Jordan Howard's hands after he, already decided he wasn't doing that. So just bad timing there. I don't necessarily hate that play call. The result obviously did not work out, but the issue I did take with the fake punt was just like you said, why take the ball out of your playmaker's hands? I'm not a huge fan of that idea, especially with the way Trubisky was playing. And then I have less of a problem with the fake punt as much as I do with giving the ball to Taquan Mizell on that 3rd down, because Taquan Mizell is basically average. I think someone tweeted he's averaging 2 yards per carry this season. So when you need I wouldn't say crucial, but obviously it's a 3rd down. When you need a 3rd down gain of 3 yards, why are you handing the ball to a guy who's averaging 2 yards per carry this season? It's just a head-scratching decision. Taquan Mizell continues to get snaps, and yet he hasn't produced in basically any big moment that I can think of outside of, I think he made a touchdown catch in the Thanksgiving game against the Lions. But other than that, that's like the only moment of positive production that I can think of this season from him. So the fact that he continues to be a part of the game plan is very perplexing to me.
Yeah, I think it's almost the fact that Mizell has done anything, the fact that Mizell has actually, had some kind of impact, still extremely minimal. That speaks volumes to what Nagy is able to coax out of his players. But just I don't know if I'm going to be able to stomach a 3rd-and-3 short call to take Taquan Mizell in the third quarter if they're in a tight game against the Seahawks in the wild card game in a few weeks, or whoever obviously they play, or in the divisional game or against the Rams or Saints. For a roster, as I think it speaks to the Bears' talent. I think it speaks to how well prepared the Bears have been by Nagy in particular, that they can overcome these kinds of boneheaded mistakes, and they often have this year. But when you're truly going to play the best teams in the league, when you're truly going to, when you're going to have, when everything's on the line for both squads, those kinds of things, they'll come back to bite you. Those kinds of personnel decisions with myself, all of that stuff is going to, that's what's going to be magnified. I mean, Nagy, his mentor is Andy Reid. No one, he should know that better than anybody. And I'm sure that he thinks about it himself. Like, Andy Reid has a reputation for making those kinds of boneheaded decisions and having poor time management or time and clock management in the postseason. And it's a big, I mean, as much as his teams themselves have faltered, it's a big reason why his teams have never, why Reid himself has never won a Super Bowl. And Nagy was often a part of a lot of those staffs in Kansas City and Philadelphia. So it's just something to monitor. I will say this for Nagy in comparison to his mentor. Nagy's mistakes are often born more out of aggression, born out of being more forward thinking, born out of trying to give his team an edge, while Reid's are being more conservative and thinking he has more time and everything. But it's still a valid contrast and comparison, I think, for me to make.
Yeah, I definitely think, like you said, it's to me, again, it's just less about the actual decisions and more the personnel. If you're giving that ball to Jordan Howard or Tariq Cohen, I don't have a problem with that play. You know what I mean? Even if it doesn't result in the first down. But Taquan Mizell is not a playmaker. He's basically a guy on the roster that, and I think, people have said that Nagy likes him for his speed. Yeah, he's fast, but that doesn't mean that he's really productive. And so if you're giving that ball to someone who is a playmaker for this team that has consistently showed an ability to make plays, Jordan Howard, in the first half was consistently picking up, short gains for first downs on carries like that. Why are you getting away from that? It's just an example of, with the personnel kind of overthinking it a little bit. It doesn't end up costing the Bears the game, but it's things that against better teams, could cost them the game. So you do want to just kind of monitor it, and hopefully, again, Nagy's going to have to continue to, get better. He's going to learn from things like this, like he learned from the week 1 mistakes. But it's just something that you hope that he will see this moment, and hopefully we start to see less Taquan Mizell moving forward, and especially in the playoffs.
We do have some DB injuries hitting the Bears hard in recent weeks, Adam. For one, obviously, we'll talk about the more pressing issue. Eddie Jackson, an ankle sprain, is now confirmed, and he was in a walking boot, albeit with a smile in the Bears postgame locker room as everybody wore their hats. How concerned are you, especially with the playoffs just about 3 weeks away now?
If it's becomes a long-term thing, I think that I'll be concerned about that, obviously. Nagy said that we will know more in the next 24 to 48 hours, so there's potential that we get an update on it in Nagy's Monday morning press conference. But overall, he walked off. He was walking in the walking boot. So what that says to me, in my extreme lack of knowing anything about the medical side of football, is that if he can bear weight on it, I kind of think that basically what that comes down to is managing the pain and making sure there's not major swelling and that he can move the ankle. But if he can bear weight on it, that's a big step, at least towards recovery. So it is not as bad as it could have been. It could have been broken, and he's on crutches. So that kind of makes me feel good. And then also the fact that they have now, clinched the division, and then with Dallas losing today, are kind of in the driver's seat for that 3 seed. They're in a much, less precarious position if they were to lose one game, because Dallas basically would have to win out and the Bears lose out in order for them to have the same record. So with that said, I think that puts the Bears in a decent spot to where if they are to miss Eddie Jackson for next week, which I think is likely, and then even if they were to miss him for 2 weeks, if that's what's best to get him right for the playoffs, they can survive that kind of loss. And it will also give them an opportunity to see what kind of depth they have and what they have in Adrian Amos, who's a pending free agent.
Yeah, even Deion Bush, the guy who's probably their third or fourth safety, you're kind of going to get to see a look at him. I mean, next week, um, maybe not as easy as we originally thought. 49ers beating the Seahawks today, so those Bears safeties are going to get tested by Kyle Shanahan and company. And the Bears are lucky. I think fortunate they don't have too much on the line to where they can play around a little bit more and test that out. And where they're pending first team All Pro because Eddie Jackson is going to be a first team All Pro. He can really get healthy. 3 weeks. I'd anticipate. Depends on obviously the severity. If this is something like Adam Shaheen, they're lucky it's not an Adam Shaheen ankle sprain where he misses 2 months when he sprains his foot. 2 to 3 weeks should be more than enough to get one of your best defensive backs. Adam, what did you think of Sherrick McMahon's performance in place of Bryce Callahan?
I thought, I was thankful. I kind of anticipated the Packers to pick on him a little bit more than they did. If you think back to week one of the big things that the Packers did was they really threw the ball at Nick Kwiatkowski a lot. Slow linebacker, not very good in pass coverage. And obviously he was in the game in week one a lot more than Roquan Smith was. This week, Roquan Smith being in there in that spot, less of a weak spot. So the weak link in terms of pass coverage was going to be Sherrick McManus. They didn't really go at him as much as they really just kind of played the same kind of short attack passing game. But then obviously he'd had that big pass tip on the ball to Randall Cobb that would have been a touchdown. So that was a big play. I thought he was, more than acceptable in terms of that. I didn't notice a whole lot. I'll have to probably go back and rewatch to kind of keep an eye on McManus and what he did well, but he definitely did not play poorly. And when you're, a backup in a tough position, not playing poorly is, more than acceptable, I think.
Yeah. If you're I don't know if I don't think he's necessarily a weak link. I think the Bears, for once, this is basically or generally the same secondary as 2017, and this is a secondary that it's just funny to me looking back now, where we thought that they were going to be a true weakness on this roster. We thought that they would be a real mitigating point for any success the Bears could have under Ryan Pace and whatever head coach he'd end up picking next. And I know this could just sound like me being a contrarian, but I'd argue they're the best overall unit now in terms of top end talent, and now obviously in depth. I mean, McManus isn't like you said, he's not a world beater and he's not their starter, but he's adequate depth, and it speaks volumes that they can survive by putting a guy in like that in the middle of a playoff push, in the middle of a Super Bowl push. It was off. I made a point too where, guys like Aaron Rodgers. How many times has Aaron Rodgers, Adam, when he's broken the pocket, how many times has he broken the hearts of the Bears over the years with like a 50-yard bomb laser in between a few defenders or some kind of crazy catch? How many times has he done that over the years? He didn't really do that today, and that's a testament to the secondary. That's a testament to them maintaining coverage for like 5 or 6 seconds at a time. That even when the Bears pass rush didn't get home, you had guys like McManus. You had guys like Jackson. I mean, injured now, and like Umukamara and Fuller, all really, really locked in. The talent, the top end talent and depth of that group is so impressive that they still survived without a guy that I think we've talked about often in the podcast was having an all-pro caliber year in Callahan himself.
Yeah, definitely. And with, kind of along the same mold, a lot of the sacks, especially, the first one that Leonard Floyd had were kind of the result of really good downfield coverage and Rodgers having nowhere to go with the football. So the secondary really stepped up big there. And like you said, Eddie Jackson was having an all-pro type year from the slot, or I should say Bryce Callahan. Bryce Callahan having an all-pro type year from the slot. Eddie Jackson is going to be an all-pro at the safety position. Kyle Fuller definitely deserves to be a all-pro at the cornerback position when you look at the production he's had and what it's, taken to be an all-pro at that position in the past. So with all of that, with just those three, when you're talking 3 out of your top 5, that's 60%, that pretty much puts you in the discussion about being one of the best in the NFL in terms of secondaries. And then Prince Amukamara is definitely, a very good coverage cornerback and very physical, he's made a lot of good plays this year as well. So just that whole overall group, like you said, is definitely one of the best in the NFL, if not the absolute best. And that again today was just the Bears having 5 sacks today is a testament to them as much as it is to the Bears having an elite pass rush, because at least 1 or 2 of those were coverage sacks straight up.
Adam, my friend, it's been a long time since the Bears were a playoff contender, since the Bears were a playoff team, since the Bears had a team of this caliber in general. And I'm not normally one to dive into the narratives like this. You know me. But how gratifying for you was it for the Bears to win their first division since the turn of the decade over the Packers, over a team that has made that this past 8-year stretch the most miserable for the Bears in particular? How gratifying was that for you? Tell me what that means.
Oh, it felt great. I mean, it was something that, when the Vikings lost last week, and that basically became the opportunity for the Bears. I mean, if I was a player on the team, I would have been chomping at the bit. Like, what an awesome opportunity to basically, especially because I anticipated a bounce back week for Mitch Trubisky, and then obviously he had a bounce back week. What an amazing performance by this team. And like you said, the Packers have haunted the nightmares of the Bears for years, and particularly of Bears fans for years. And then just Aaron Rodgers, like you mentioned earlier, how many times has he taken these kinds of moments and just broken our hearts with it? And so for the Bears to come out and basically play a dominant football game for 60 minutes, be in control the whole way, and for Mitch Trubisky to be the better quarterback on the field today, what an amazing statement win that is for these Bears. And it's just I think that's a little, like I said earlier, I mentioned, I used the phrase earlier on the podcast earlier this week, slaying the dragon. That's certainly what this was. The Bears went in there and they slayed the dragon. And now, because of that, they're moving on as champions. And with the Vikings win as well, the Packers are out. And so we know for sure that the Bears will be dancing in the playoffs, and the Packers will be at home.
The Packers missed the playoffs for 2 years in a row. When was the last time they did that, Adam? Do you have that off? I know when it is.
I don't have it off the top of my head. I think it was like in mid 2000s, like 2007, 2008 or something like that.
2005 and 2006. What lines up with the Bears for that?
The Bears went to the Super Bowl that one year.
Yeah, and they also went to the playoffs in 2005. Arguably this time around they have a bit of a more complete team and an actual. I'd say Mitch Trubisky's a sizable upgrade over Kyle Orton. Adam, let's read. We had a few questions overall from I think like 2 or 3, nothing really in particular. Game making. Let's read those, and then let's take our lessons from the Bears this year and look ahead to. They're not really meaningless at this point, but it's going to be difficult, obviously, for this team to jump up to a first-round bye or whatever, but we'll get to that in a second. 3-word reviews. We have 2. Jonathan Siegel at Siegel_John Siegs. Super Bowl bound ! The super fans are going to start are going to start showing themselves out.
I'm banging my chest right now, dude.
You're banging your chest, sausage lodged in your throat.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can hear this, but here you go. I did it.
Oh, dude! Oh my God! So, are you okay?
I'm feeling good.
Okay. Randall J. Sanders, quote, Bears, my friends. Okay, so he's going along with it. Adam, are you still choking?
I'm good now.
Okay, and this is a good
it sounds like you're choking.
Oh yeah. I also had a Polish sausage, and it's like the whole thing. I didn't bite it all. It's literally lodged down my throat. Like I didn't take a bite out of it. I was just that hungry. I was that hungry in my Bears Letterman jacket. This is a good lead-in. Jonathan Siegel also asks, with this team, is it better to keep playing each week full go, or is it better to hope for a bye?
That's actually a really good question, and kind of a discussion I was having with some people on Twitter earlier, in the DMs, not in my mentions if you go looking for it, but, kind of in the same mold of, if the Bears position is locked up for week 17, should they rest starters? I kind of lean, at least offensively, more towards the Bears it would be to the Bears' benefit to play every week. Now, obviously, having a bye week would move you 1 week closer into the playoffs. Without having to actually earn it, and then also you would be in an advantage of guaranteeing yourself home field for that game, but they already have that for their first game anyway. And then that you will also have a week of rest. But the Bears haven't performed the best when they've had rest. Obviously, the defense came out rather flat in the 2 games in which they had the byes. Now, one of them was only a mini bye after Thanksgiving, but when you look at how the defense played in Miami and then how the defense played in New York, which was after the bye week and after their mini bye from playing on Thanksgiving, the defense kind of came out flat. And then obviously Chase Daniel played in the one game, but the offense wasn't particularly special either outside of in Miami. Mitch Trubisky had a really strong second half in which he pretty much could have won the team the game. So with that being said, I think it is to the Bears' benefit to continue to play football week in and week out. They've showed that they're a reps team. They're kind of a rhythm team. And while momentum doesn't necessarily always carry over week to week, they can kind of continue to build confidence and keep that rhythm going. And I think that would be important. So if they were able to get a first round bye, obviously I think they would try to do that and it would be good. But I think it is more to their benefit if they end up being the 3 seed and just keep playing.
You wouldn't perhaps rest to the defense in a Week 17 game at Minnesota where you've just lost 2 secondary starters in successive weeks, and obviously that can really happen in football on any play in any week, no matter the situation. But you wouldn't rest that defense and let them absolutely be 100% fresh for a home game in Soldier Field where they've been dynamite the entire year. Like you said, like those Giants and Dolphins, those are road losses. I think I personally think it might be a little different if you had this. Let's say they stay in the 3 seed and the Vikings are playing for the playoff lives. I think you could rest guys like Mack. I think you could rest guys like Goldman and Floyd and company, and maybe perhaps just trot out like Trubisky and most of his entire offensive line, because obviously you don't want him hurt of anybody, and keep them in a rhythm. I think it's more imperative to keep those guys in a rhythm because I think for Trubisky and company still need repetitions. I think they're still progressing. I think they're still getting better. And I think that Rams game was a great example of it. He got that under his belt, and then today comes out and blows up the Packers. I would rest one side and let the others still play if they get locked in. That's just me, though. Obviously, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation.
Yeah, I think, like I said, the Bears defense has come out flat in the opportunities where they have had the rest. Now, be that what it may, there's, a variety of reasons. Obviously, a big driving force of coming out flat in Miami may have been how hot it was. That was obviously talked up. The Bears weren't used to playing in 105-degree weather. And then in New York, you had Odell Beckham Jr. throwing touchdowns, Saquon Barkley jumping over dudes. It's like there's some mitigating circumstances to that, to where it's not so simple as, the defense had a break and they came out flat. But with that being said, it does give me a little bit of pause. Now, if they get to week 17 and you're guaranteed that you're in the playoffs and you're going to be the 3 seed, well, they're already guaranteed they're in the playoffs, but if they know they're going to be the 3 seed, because let's say they win next week and Dallas loses or whatever, they know for sure that the 3 seed, then I do think it makes sense to sit some offense or to sit some starters on the defensive side. I can see where the argument for sitting offensive starters, but Mitch Trubisky has said repeatedly that that he's a rep guy, and I think this offense kind of needs the reps. So at the very least, I think you play them for a little bit and maybe like one half, let them get a little bit of time in. But I think Matt Nagy, if that was a situation, would probably sit the key players like the starters and everything, because when you look at his preseason approach, what that was. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a back and forth. Again, it's like you said, damned if you do, damned if you don't. I just lean a little more towards not resting people outside of maybe guys like Mack and Floyd and Hicks, like you said. But I just don't think it would be a super smart move, because this team has shown that they're very much a rhythm team.
a rhythm team. Adam, before we get to things we learned, just of the potential teams, let's say the Bears stay at the 3 seed. We can have this conversation now. So 3 seed or 4 seed. I will name a few teams here, and you tell me who you would fear the most as an observer: the Seahawks, the Eagles, or the Vikings.
Of those teams, I think so. On paper, I fear the Seahawks the most. But given the entire scenarios, I think I'm most worried about the Vikings just because I'm not really into the idea of playing a team 3 times in 1 year.
That's
Even
a
if
cliche, though, man. That's a cliche.
Yeah, I guess, but teams learn so much when by, divisional games. I think you look just at today for an example, how the Bears approach this game differently and how just the way that the Bears kind of learned from that. I think that from the week one, no loss, I should say. I think that especially division, like teams learn so much. And if the Bears were to have to play the Vikings in back-to-back weeks, that's just not an exciting thing for me. I don't think that would make me a little more nervous than if they were, than like for the Viking situation where they played 2 times in 3 weeks. Or the Lions situation, I should say. So yeah, with that, I don't know if I'm into the idea of playing the Vikings twice in 3 weeks, but I think that of those matchups, the one I would be most nervous about for the matchup purposes is the Seahawks.
All right, Adam. One thing you learned on Sunday afternoon from the Bears win over the Packers.
I think I said it earlier, but Mitch Trubisky absolutely is your franchise quarterback. That was a performance that you want to see from the guy that you have entrusted to be the face and leader of this franchise for the next, decade plus. In the moments that it meant the most, he stepped up, played extremely well, made the big throws. Again, didn't have the biggest performance on the stat sheet. If you were playing him in your fantasy lineup, he probably didn't light it up, but he did what was necessary. And again, I just come back to that Trey Burton touchdown throw. He really kind of stepped on the Packers' throats with that throw. Any kind of chance that or hopes that the Packers had in terms of building momentum toward a comeback, the Bears shut that down. Mitch Trubisky shut that down with that throw. And then he just had that swag stance and walk after the fact. Like that was a performance you want to see from your franchise quarterback. And I was very encouraged by his performance today.
I think my lesson is if the Bears get a first-round bye, unlikely as it is right now, they will, at minimum, play in the NFC Championship game because this defense, I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, they're completely – they're probably going to travel well on the road either way, but they are a far different animal when they have a lustful Soldier Field crowd just heartily booing – the opposing offense and making it loud for them, making it uncomfortable. It's just these last two weeks against the Packers and Rams have been the most atmospheric I've seen Soldier Field in years. I mean, obviously that happens only when a team is good, but it's just so evident when the guys in particular, when guys like Mack and Floyd and company feed off of that, with their pass rush and all that. If they can somehow get one of those first two spots, the Bears will be playing in I think it's mid-January this year, like January 19th or something. They will be playing on that weekend against one of the Saints, against one of the Rams, and I'd be wary if I was the rest of the NFC. And since we're still going to do our hardcore analysis. We're still going to get ready for the playoffs. I mean, we're not ones to necessarily overlook the 49ers and the Vikings. The Bears still have to officially clinch that 3 seed, Adam. But they won the North, and I think generally they did everything we were going to say. Maybe surpassed expectations way back in September when they traded for Mack. What have you learned from the Bears this season? We can have this conversation. Now that they are division champions, I want this answer from you. What have you learned about the Bears and Matt Nagy and everybody this season on the whole?
I think what I've really learned is that this is a franchise on the uptick. And, for as much as this season has surpassed any expectations that we've had, I think we talked about it just the other day, but this is ideally only the beginning. I mentioned, I just talked about Mitchell Trubisky having a franchise quarterback kind of day. He's not even close to a finished product yet. He's still continuing to grow. And it's just his second year, which is kind of like, year 1B for him, given that there's a completely new offense. And then Matt Nagy, just, absolutely home run head coach hire. Going to be one of the best coaches in the NFL for a long time, hopefully. And Ryan Pace, his vision for this team to build through the draft and then supplement where it was necessary. You look at this team, he's basically built this entire team from scratch. And that's just an incredible accomplishment for him. So I've learned that I trust the key people that are in the key spots, Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, Mitch Trubisky, Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith as going to be the quarterback of that defense for the future. Those kinds of players, the people that are in the right spots are the right people for the job. And that's a really encouraging thing for a franchise that's hopefully, geared up to go on a long run of, of relevant contention and relevant football.
Yeah, man. I think back to 2015 and 2016. You always have that initial optimism. Well, hey, Pace making some good moves, getting some good guys. Then pessimism sets in, and realism sets in. Like, oh, maybe it might never happen. But it was always a patient build. It was always a grind, despite public criticism, despite public outcry. Ryan Pace built a contender. Ryan Pace built this team that should now have a 4 to 5 year window that is nowhere close to salary cap hell. And I even tweeted about it. I mean, what's really his worst mistake? Drafting Kevin White. Can you really blame the injuries that White had on Pace? Can you really, or maybe even the 2017 free agent class? But I'm still not convinced he was entirely that invested in making so much out of that. For me, he's the guy that he picked all those right people. He's the one. The McCaskies in particular picked Pace, and then he's the one that put Nagy in place. He's the one that put Trubisky in place. He's the one that put Roquan Smith in place, and he's just had hit after hit after hit in free agencies and in these drafts and in building up probably the most complete Bears team we've seen this century. Really, it's not hyperbole to say anymore. On both sides of the ball, really in all three phases, this is the most complete Bears team of the century, and that's a credit to him. They have a division title. They were doing their most hearty club dub celebration on Sunday, thanks to Pace's efforts, thanks to Pace's patience and commitment to a plan, despite it not always looking great, despite those just 14 wins in his first 3 years. Well, they might be able to get 14 if all things shake out well. They might be able to get 14 wins this year alone, maybe more. Obviously, you'd have to get to 15. You'd have to do something pretty special in February, but he is instrumental in this turnaround, and he's the one that had this vision the whole time. And I just have to applaud that. I mean, I saw it coming, maybe a little bit away with it, maybe just being, putting on some orange tinted glasses, but I could have never envisioned it just perfectly setting up like this. Things change so often in the NFL from year to year, but after winning their first division this decade, you can't help but feel like something special is about to happen with the Bears over the next few years, man. I don't want to wax poetically too much, but I really kind of do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely agree with that. And, like I said, the right people are in the right spots for this team. And that's such an encouraging thing. It's such a strange thing. And, you mentioned what are Pace's biggest mistakes? The 2017 free agent class. Well, that hasn't hurt them this year outside of a little bit of dead money for Mike Glennon. And then, drafting Kevin White, like you said, you can't really blame him for that. I think the number one move that maybe you call a mistake from Ryan Pace is cutting Robbie Gould. And when, getting rid of a kicker is your biggest mistake, that's not necessarily a bad track record at all. So yeah, definitely, he's the right man to build this team. And, it's definitely been very good for the Bears to have him as their general manager. And then, to circle back to what you said about, hopefully having 14 or 15 wins this year. I mean, the things are shaking up pretty well for the Bears to be able to kind of play in the NFC Championship game and maybe even win. I mean, I got the Sunday Night Football game on here, and Todd Gurley, first of all, the Rams don't look that good, and Todd Gurley just got hurt. So we'll have to kind of something to monitor there. But I think the Bears can beat the Rams in January anyway, even if it does go to LA. They obviously showed the ability.
There's not much of a home field advantage there.
Right. Absolutely not. Yeah. And the Bears showed the ability to shut down the Rams offense last week. And especially if Todd Gurley's hurt, I don't expect it to be the same level of dominance holding them to 6 points, obviously, but the Bears defense can run with any offense in the NFL. I believe that 100%. So I honestly kind of feel like at this point, if the Bears don't at least make it to the NFC Championship game, I'll probably be rather disappointed in their playoff run.
You'll be disappointed if they don't make the NFC Championship game.
I mean, at this point, and again, obviously there's been so much growth for this team this year, but this might sound even crazier, but I will kind of be disappointed if they don't win the Super Bowl. Obviously, we're hoping that this is only the beginning of a long, long run of contention, but you only really get these opportunities so fast. Look, I mean, just the Eagles are a great example to where we thought the Eagles were kind of on the rise. They were in a similar position to the Bears last year. Obviously there's some obvious differences, but second-year quarterback, they win the Super Bowl this year. They're looking like they might not even make the playoffs. So, these opportunities can come and go so fast in the NFL that if the Bears don't win the Super Bowl, I will be a little disappointed that that's the case. Obviously, we're hoping that this is only the beginning, like I said, but I definitely think that it's not unreasonable to feel that way.
Adam, that is the boldest take you've had over the past 3.5 months, my man. That is, I'm not going to necessarily disagree. I was just like a little taken aback, like, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. The bar is now NFC Championship or bust. The bar is now Super Bowl or bust, I guess. And I think we've reached that point. That's such we said on the podcast last week, that's such a jarring point to make, but that's where the Bears are now. My friend, for your boldness, for your patience with me and waiting to get this podcast set up, I appreciate you, buddy, as always. It's going to be a fun ride into the playoffs and playoff run for us here at TBN, man. Yeah, absolutely. Bear down, my friend. Bear down. You guys can follow Adam on Twitter @_Adam Hess. You can follow me on Twitter @RobertSiglinski. And you can follow us on Twitter @TheBlitzNet. The Bears win their first division title and clinch a postseason berth for the first time since 2010 with a 24-17 win over the Packers. They should, at this point, be locked into the NFC's number 3 seed, and there will be a home playoff game in January. Believe it, breathe it. The Bears are back, and they're a Super Bowl contender. I know. Calm down. We'll have it covered for you. We'll have it covered for you at the Blitz Network leading into January and throughout. And until then, everybody, stay classy.